Humanity's relationship with bees is one of contradictions. They are cute, fuzzy, flying balls of yellow and black, and they are hardworking and industrious, things society often values. They pollinate our gardens and make honey. They are relatable, six-legged friends. Armed with a painful stinger, they stab into you, injecting a highly toxic venom that you might have an allergic reaction to, and die. People are afraid of bees, a fear called apophobia. Bees are a lot more complex than we give them credit, and everything in this opening statement is kind of true, but also not completely accurate. Bees are highly derived wasps. Actually, they are a whole clade of wasps, Anthophyta, that have gone vegan, which has to make them like the ultimate hipsters. They went vegan back in the Cretaceous. Most solitary wasps collect meat in the form of other insects or even carrion, and either feed that directly to their larvae, or stock a burrow or other chamber with invertebrate carcasses and then lay an egg in there. Bees, though, use a plant protein source, pollen. They aren't just drinking nectar and then carrying around those big bundles of pollen on their pollen baskets called corbicula and nicely dropping it off to flowers to thank them for giving them a little sugar water. They are putting pollen in their pollen baskets because it is protein rich and so makes an excellent food for their larvae. The bees and the plants, though, have a mutual agreement, and the plant is fine to let the bees run off with its pollen as long as it's really messy about it and thus spreads the plant's genes to other plants. They even give the bees nectar to help power their flight muscles, which is super generous, and many bees that form colonies take some of that sugar and use it to make honey, which is an excellent way of storing sugar to be used later. Some plants, though, really don't want to part with their pollen, and by some plants, I mean certain orchids. They also don't bother with nectar. Instead, they make an aromatic perfume that male orchid bees collect in their highly modified back leg to attract mates, which is unique because in most bees, females are the ones pollinating flowers, and males just sort of hang around and focus on mating. Bees are not aggressive. They are aggressively defensive. Some bees don't even have stings, like these Trigona stingless bees. Bees will only attack if you threaten something they have to defend, but don't just take my narrating voice's word for it. Yeah, this is different. I'm standing in a swarm of bees, which is terrifying. Right behind me in this bush, there is a dark patch you can probably see, and that is about 1,000 western honeybees. Oh my gosh, I'm totally surrounded. They are buzzing me. I'm very scared. Right now they're sending out a bunch of scouts that are flying in every direction, and those are going to find new suitable sites that they can nest in. This is not that stupid of a thing to do. It feels like it, but because they're not defending any resources like honey or their offspring, they're completely placid, and I can stand right in the middle of this swarm. I would say I'm probably 2 meters away from this. I could get closer. In theory, I could put my hand in there. I don't want to, because if I press any of these bees, they will sting because then they're defending themselves. But right now, they're completely placid if I'm just standing here. A swarm of honeybees is a very interesting sight and shows how honeybees reproduce and form new colonies. The queen abandons her home hive with 2/3 of her workers, with a couple dozen queen pupae about ready to hatch and take over what was left behind. The old queen is off to find a new home, and with nothing to defend, the swarm is so docile you could stick your hand inside it if you wanted to, even with so-called killer bees. Actually, this isn't an area they have been reported, so these very well could be Africanized honeybees. Africanized honeybees are just a hybrid between East African lowland honeybees and several species of European honeybees. Honeybees are such a ubiquitous part of garden life, it may come as a small surprise they are not native to North America. They were brought from Europe where people raised them for honey. It was actually to increase honey production in South America that drove the creation of the Africanized honeybee. Just they escaped the lab they were created in and spread across the neotropics rapidly. Despite the media coming up with a frightening term for these animals, beekeepers can still work with them. However, they have a much more defensive nature and will chase things that bother the colony 1/4 of a mile, much further than your typical honeybee. Never mess with a hive. Let's look at some pretty footage of some native North American bees. Meet Diadasia, a little desert bee that is very industrious, building a thin little turret out of dirt above the entrance to its nest chambers. Why? Well, it doesn't seem like anyone has quite figured it out. Perhaps it prevents flooding by keeping rain out of the hole. Maybe it helps the bees find their specific burrow in the aggregation, or perhaps it helps defend against predators like the velvet ant, which is a parasitoid wasp that is the sworn enemy of ground nesting bees. I really love the color on this mason bee. Look at these big bumblebees, they look so cuddly, but these girls are quite impressive insects. Thank you for checking this video out. On this channel, I strive to create quality miniature documentaries and educational content, with a focus on biology and conservation, hoping to inspire outdoor exploration and environmental action. Bye.